Hey Gorehounds, remember when The Force Awakens came out and you saw grown men cry?
Oh my god, yes! I'm crying. I'm crying.
Eventually though, the hype train derailed and people started seeing the flaws and how it basically ripped off A New Hope. When Halloween 2018 released, reviews were higher than that time I did formaldehyde shots. Fans and critics alike really seem to love this movie, and it appears near the top spots in tons of ranking lists. And whilst it seems crazy to compare it to a movie like Force Awakens, Halloween 2018 also borrows so much from the previous movies, it often feels like an amalgamation of them. And now that a little time has gone by, we're starting to see more and more complaints about the movie. Mostly from me. Here are my main points of contention. Old Michael, Halloween H2O 2.0, Halloween 2 Retcon, and the Dr. Sartain twist. Now let's get into this shit. Halloween 2018 begins at Smith's Grove Rehabilitation Facility, and because podcasters are trained professionals like the FBI, they get to interview Michael Myers. And we get to see what old Father Time has been up to with one of horror's most iconic villains. Old people are great. They can play a wide range of characters, from powerful beings to wise sages, but sometimes they're just not suited for a role. A good example is Indiana Jones. One of the reasons why those movies were so popular is because of the character. He's just so cool, and the audience wants to be like that too. It just wouldn't have worked with an older actor, and that's part of the reason why the Crystal Skull lost a lot of the magic. Well, that and the fucking aliens. A character like Michael Myers is best played by a younger to mid-age actor, because we have to believe that the character can dish out and take a certain amount of punishment. The movie's opening also ruins Michael's character a bit for me. He got captured straight after the events of 1978's Halloween and has been locked up for the past 40 years, so it kinda detracts from the boogeyman element of his character. I mean, imagine if they locked Jason up. Sure, it's possible within the physical rules of the movie's universe. I mean, these guys aren't ghosts or anything, but it sure takes something away from their characters if we see them doing time like regular Joes. So after failing to get a rise out of Michael, the podcasters leave, and because they are the FBI or whatever, they get to keep the mask. They then go over to Laurie Connor's house to see what Father Time has been up to with one of horror's— Oh my god! So when Jamie Lee Curtis was confirmed for the cast, it wasn't hard to imagine how the plot of the movie might go down. You could tell it was probably gonna go down the H2O route and retcon a lot of the sequels and feature a PTSD Laurie facing off against the Shape again. And that's pretty much what we got. H2O retconned over half the Halloween franchise, and this was before retconning was a popular sport. Halloween 2018 goes one movie further, and even ignores fan favourite Halloween 2, but more on that later. So even though Halloween 2018 borrowed the PTSD Laurie idea, I'd argue that H2O did it better. How so? Well, H2O's Laurie is still related to Michael Myers, so she has a good reason to believe that he will come after her again if he survived. Moving town and changing names are reasonable steps to take. She also owns a gun, is overly cautious and protective of her son, but at the same time she's trying to lead some sort of life, albeit very secluded. 2018's Laurie Connor, on the other hand, was a victim of a random attack of a killer who escaped and was subsequently locked up again. And sure, that's gonna leave some scars, but 40 years later and she's got a bigger gun collection than the NRA, lives in a prison, has a strained relationship with her family, and is a better shot than a T-1000. It's not totally implausible, but it all seems a little too extreme. She's got no reason to believe that Michael will come after her again. So why didn't she just move away from Haddonfield and try and get her life back together like the H2O Laurie? If anything, the two characters should be swapped over, as H2O's Laurie has more to fear. In H2O, they never found Michael's body, so if alive, he could still come after her. So it makes more sense that H2O Laurie would go all Sarah Connor. After the podcasters leave, we get introduced to Laurie's daughter and granddaughter. Laurie Connor then shoots up some targets in preparation for taking out Michael, but she bails at the last minute. The plot then kicks up a notch when Michael escapes. He hunts down the fucking podcasters and gets his mask back. Way to go, Michael. Laurie Connor springs into action when she hears of the escape and tries to warn her family. Then, we basically get Halloween 2 for 5 minutes, which brings us to the next point. Although the 2018 movie decided that the Halloween 2 was insignificant enough to actually happen, they still ripped off about half of it, and for a full 5 minutes when Michael is going around killing, it feels like you're watching a Halloween 2 remake. There's such classics like Kid with Radio Bump, The Sandwich Lady Blues, Hanging on the Telephone, and later we even get A Streetcar Named Michael. And everybody's favorite, Blown to Shit. There's also lots of nods to the other movies in the franchise, and I feel like this movie is trying to have its pumpkin pie and eat it, much like The Force Awakens did by having not stormtroopers and not rebels. I do get why they decided to ignore part 2 though. The brother and sister twist has been a divisive element for the franchise, so I guess they wanted to start again with as clean a slate as possible. But another unfortunate consequence of sweeping all but the first movie aside is that it diminishes Dr. Loomis's role in the series. In this timeline, he's now only in one movie, and it kinda negates much of his rivalry with Michael. But I guess if they wanted to get rid of the brother-sister element, then they didn't really have much choice. So, Michael goes on a rampage and the cops are actually pretty useful. They heed Laurie Connor's warnings and actually go after and find Michael, but he gets away. Michael then targets Laurie Connor's granddaughter, but she gets away, and Deputy Hawkins and Dr. Sartain pick her up. On the way back to Laurie's, Deputy Hawkins sees Michael and runs him over. He goes to finish the job, but Sartain kills him, saves Michael, and puts on his mask? I've always loved the idea of a dark Dr. Loomis character, someone who uses increasingly unorthodox and cruel methods in an attempt to understand Michael, but in the end becomes just as evil as his subject. But a character like that needs some writing care and development. Halloween 2018 completely fucked it up, and any character development was relegated to a twist that nearly derails the whole movie. I mean, they knew they were going to make a follow-up movie, so why not explore the character a bit more, and leave the twist for the second or even third movie? Give the character one of those things. An arc! Laurie's granddaughter escapes and leads Michael to Laurie Connor's fortress for the final, where one of the most important aspects of security is overlooked. Get a solid door, Laurie Connor. I know a guy who can hook you up with one. After a tense game of cat and mouse, Laurie Connor reveals that the house wasn't her prison, it was Michael's, and she traps him in the basement and blows him to shit. Halloween 2018 isn't a terrible movie by any stretch, and it still does a lot of things right. The ending is tense and exciting, there's a good amount of kills and some creative shots and visuals going on. I respect that they try to get as close to the source material as possible, bringing in John Carpenter to produce and Nick Castle to don the mask once more. And for the love of all that's gory, they finally nailed that fucking mask. Michael looks cool as ever. It also feels like a true Halloween movie and has a good Halloweeny atmosphere for the first half. Laurie kinda lets the side down though, as she doesn't put up any Halloween decorations. Not unless you count these mannequins. What's her deal? Why doesn't she like Halloween? Oh. So, Gorehounds, is Halloween 2018 terrorific? In a franchise that contains such howlers like Resurrection, yeah, it's definitely one of the better movies, but it borrowed too heavily from the past to be considered truly great.